Back in early 2022, Smith & Wesson came out with a hammer-fired double-stack ultra-compact and called it the CSX. CS for Chief Special, probably going back on the heritage. It goes back 3/4 of a century. And the X can be for extra capacity, enhanced, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, the CSX came out in early 2022, and it met with some issues. I've done a number of videos on these, on the CSX in general. I'll post them as we throughout this video here. You can see by this sample that it is well worn, a lot of holster wear on it, because this is my carry gun when I'm working around the air quotes here, when I'm working around the ranch. Manual safety, hammer is down right now, and you can actually work the safety and the slide, work the slide of the hammer with this hammer down on this, or with the safety. We'll talk more about that here in a minute. Anyway, it had some issues. You can see this one's wearing Talon grips, which fixed one of the issues, and that's traction. Again, go back to the other videos. It also was not optics ready. So, earlier this year, 2025, they came out with the CSX E-Series, basically the same thing, but enhanced again to make up for some of the issues. And we'll talk about those as we go along. Well, not to be outdone, Kimber came out with their version of the micro compact, and both of these are patterned after the old Colt Mustang. So Kimber came out with the CDS9 compact double stack 9. We're going to look at the pros, the cons, the similarities, the differences, and we are actually going to pick a winner out of this group. Stay with me. All right, thanks for dropping in while we look at the new CSX E-Series and the Kimber CDS9 and compare them and see if we're going to pick a winner out of this. You'll notice they're each wearing the O-Sight S fully enclosed micro optic, and I did a review on this a while back. Just real brief on the optic. It is rechargeable, and here is the charger. Put that on top, and you can see by the lights on the top that the optic is fully charged. When you take it off, you can see that the charger itself is almost fully charged. Do the same thing with this one. Why do I have two different colors? Because they sent me two different colors. All right, you can see here that the optic is fully charged. The charger is not quite fully charged. So somebody had a comment when I did the original video on the O-Sight that I don't want it to charge my optic. Well, okay, charge it or change the batteries. Wait a minute, you charge your phone every day. How hard is it to charge the optic, especially when the charger will tell you the charge of the charger or the optic? All right, so much for that. I really do like those O-Sight S optics. They work well for me. All right, big difference. Let's get the elephant of the room out of the way to start with. The CDS9 actually now is two versions. This is the original, and now they came out with a classic, which is a little more competitive price-wise with the E-Series, or the CSX E-Series, but not quite there. So the classic, you can get that in two different flavors, by the way. The basic classic is about $100 more MSRP than the E-Series. By the way, I'm not trying to sell guns. I'm not promoting the sale of. I'm not trying to do anything other than explain the similarities and differences between these guns. If you want the Kimber CDS9 Classic with an optics cut, though, add another $70 to that price range, which is putting it now quite a bit higher than the CSX. So you got to hope it's worth it, right? Then you get into the original like this, and now we're talking about $400 more. So 2/3 more for the Kimber than you're paying for the Smith & Wesson. And if you want the threaded barrel, you got to add another 20 bucks or so to that. Anyway, there's 4 different options here, and what you see is what you get here, without the optic, of course. All right, the Smith & Wesson also comes with 3 magazines. It comes with a 12-round magazine, and we had an issue with the original 12-round magazine, which we might talk about if I remember. And then it also comes with a 15-round magazine and a 17-round magazine. 15 and 17 have sleeves on them that allow the magazine. By the way, these have been fully safety inspected. I'm going to come back to the 10-round mag here in a minute. These have been safety inspected. They are unloaded, being handled by a trained professional, right? All right, Kimber, same thing. We are safety inspected, everything here in the tabletop. 10-round mag back in that. So with the 12-round mag in the E-Series, it hangs over just a little bit. With the 15-round mag, it gives you a real good solid grip on the gun, but also makes it just a little harder to conceal. And then, of course, you can put the 17-round mag in. So it comes with the the 12, the 15, and the 17 with the sleeves, and even a replaceable back strap, if you wish, that will have a built-in extension to the frame to accommodate the larger magazines. So it comes with a lot of stuff, and also comes with a second back strap to make it smaller than this, which unfortunately leaves a lot of bare area on the grip, which is one of my original complaints. The Kimber, on the other hand, what you see is what you get, although you can replace the grip scales with aftermarket grips. I think Lock makes them, if I remember right. That's LOK, my favorite grip, folks. Anyway, the Kimber has a 12 round, a 10 round mag in it right now. And by the way, this only comes with a 13 or a 15. And the 13 is here, and the 15 is here. And these do not have removable sleeves like the Smith & Wesson does. That does add to the contour of the gun. No extra cost to get that. The 15 or the 13. The 13 fits the hand perfectly, but even the 10, which is optional, by the way, and I bought a couple of 10s just because they're more concealable, and I can still get half of my little finger on there and actually get a lot of leverage control down here far from the pivot point with my little finger. Not so much with the 10 round mag, which is again optional, and that's, I don't even carry the 10 round in this, but I put the 12 round in, and that 12 round is just enough to get half of my little finger on. So I can get as much on the grip with the 12 round in the Smith as I can with the 10 round in the CSX. All right, so you can still get the 10 round for the E-Series, and you can definitely get the 10 round for the Smith & Wesson. Certainly that's how it comes in states that aren't quite as free. But the difference is also mag price. You're going to spend $42 for each mag for your Smith & Wesson. You're going to spend $40 for each mag for your Kimber. And no other mags work for this. I tried the mags for the Smith & Wesson M&P, which you'd think would work, and nope, they're just a little bit fatter. And with the Kimber, you would have thought that the mags out of their KDS, their larger double-stack compact, would have fit. Nope, they don't fit either. How about the mags out of the Mako? No, they don't fit. These are proprietary mags for each gun, which means you're spending more money on magazines. All right, we'll get into some other similarities and differences. Let's look at the size. I'm going to keep the 12 round in here and the 10 round in here because that's how I carry them. And we'll look at the width. And we'll start with the top, actually. The barrel on the Kimber is 3.18 inches long, although you can get a barrel that's threaded for suppressor, and that's going to be 3.6 inches. The Smith & Wesson E-Series comes with a 3.1 inch barrel, so roughly the same size, and you can also get this with a 3.6 inch barrel. That's not threaded for suppressor. The slides look a little tapered or a little narrower on the Kimber, because it is just a fraction. The width of the slide on the Kimber is 0.90. The width of the slide on the Smith & Wesson is 0.92. Not a big deal. All right, grip, a little bit different. So if I try to line these up top of the slide, you can see the beaver tail's in a little position, a little higher bore axis on the Smith & Wesson. Optics look a little lower, but if you line up the top of the slides themselves, they're about even there. Let's get it there. We got the optics in there. So again, just a slight advantage, more axis on the Smith & Wesson. But then we get into grip width. So the grip on the Kimber is 1.17. The grip on the Smith & Wesson is 1.08. So just a fraction better for the Smith. But now you can also see that from the back end, it looks like the Smith is taller. But when you lay the Smith down with the 12 round mag and the Kimber down right on top of it, with the 10 round mag, a little difference in the back, which is the part that would print more, but you still get that finger extension in the front. So you get just a little bit longer grip overall to give you that 12 round capacity in the Smith & Wesson. Trigger reach is also pretty close on the Smith & Wesson, 2.55 inches to the trigger. On the Kimber, 2.6, so 5/100ths of an inch difference, not a big deal there. Weights, however, are a little bit different. And I normally don't weigh empty guns, but to give you a good size weight comparison, I'm doing it a couple of different ways here. The Smith & Wesson, 17.3 ounces, and that's with the optic on it. Kimber, 19.3, 2 ounces heavier for the Kimber. That's with no magazine in it. Add a magazine, and 10 plus 1, which will be here, So 11 total rounds of 124 grain ammunition, and the Smith & Wesson is 24 ounces. The Kimber is 25.9, so as you'd expect, about 2 ounces different. Not quite sure why we're a tenth of an ounce difference on that, but then we go to maximum capacity, well, not maximum capacity, but carry capacity, and we put the 12-round magazine in the Smith & Wesson and put the 13-round magazine in the Kimber, which is going to give you just a little extra length. And now we're at 25 ounces even for the Smith & Wesson and 27.6 to give you that one extra round, 13 plus 1 for the Smith & Wesson. So kind of weights are all over the place, but anyway you look at it, the Kimber is just a little bit heavier. One of the things that Smith & Wesson fixed and is better than the original is the trigger. We talked about that in the video where I actually put the original in this and the E-Series side by side. The trigger pull, and again I want to make sure these are completely empty. You got that little totally useless safety tab on the front of the trigger, which is not just a drop safety. Come on, folks. The trigger pull on this comes out to just about 5 pounds. All right, so let's take the safety off. Again, we already double checked it. We made sure that we're clear, and it's just a tiny little glitch right there, and a fairly clean break and short press with no over travel, and it's about a 5 pound trigger pull. There's enough spring tension now behind the new one that wasn't behind the old to give it a full reset, and it's an audible reset, which is nice on the Smith & Wesson. I like the feel of the trigger on that, even though it's heavier. The Kimber, on the other hand, again we are empty. The Kimber has a little bit of take up, not much, and a really nice, clean, there's just a tiny little glitch. There's another tiny little, it almost feels like a Glock trigger, but not as bad. There's another little glitch. Oh, take the hammer or safety off. There we go. So they're clean, no glitches when the safety is off. And a break at almost 90 degrees. Then a fairly long reset, but very audible, and a good feeling trigger. But here's where I got a complaint. I always shoot with my finger at the very bottom of the trigger, all scraping the trigger guard, kind of acts as a shock absorber. Plus, it gets me farther away from the pivot point up here. This little hook on the bottom of the Kimber trigger has bothered the heck out of my finger right there. Now, granted, if I shot high, but I don't shoot my guns high. I shoot my guns as low as I can get on the trigger. Again, it helps with leverage and also a little bit of friction there. I like shooting low. After an extensive range session, that hurts my finger. All right, I know, toughen up, Ryder, right? All right, a couple other things briefly about this before we get into how they shoot. One thing I did notice that working the slide on the CDS, even with the hammer down, is, or not the CDS, excuse me, the CSX, is fairly easy. And so I put my spring gauge on it, and it's 12 pounds, 5 ounces to fully rack the slide with the hammer down on the Smith & Wesson. Yet with the Kimber, it's a little heavier. Actually, it's 14 pounds even to rack the slide on this. So 9.5 pounds or 9 pounds 5 ounces with the E-Series. Did I say 12 before? I'm getting tongue-tied here. 9 pounds 5 ounces for the Smith, 14 pounds even for the Kimber. A little bit harder to rack. And then we get into recoil management. I don't know yet why the difference is, but shooting the E-Series with the 12-round mag, which is how I normally shoot it, and the CDS9 with the 10-round mag, I still get the same leverage. I showed you that before. We still get the same leverage on both guns, getting more of that little finger on the bottom, or enough to control it. But the Kimber is a snappier gun. It is more noticeable in that the recoil than the Smith. I'm not sure, again, why the difference in the two. Must have something to do with the recoil spring itself. I don't know.
Let's try the plates, starting with Alice, and the plates. It's snappier than I remember.
But anyway, I find that the Smith & Wesson is more pleasant to shoot for a couple of reasons, actually. In addition to the trigger pinch down here, I shoot with a typical thumbs forward grip, and on the Kimber, My left thumb is anchored right here in the groove of the rail. By the way, it does have a rail. For those of you who insist on your carry gun, you need to carry a light. I can differ with that. We're not going to get into that discussion here. But I find that after a number of shots, my thumb is unhappy in that little groove there. There's no real landing pad like they're getting on a lot of other guns these days. Even the little Smith & Wesson Bodyguard 2.0 has a landing pad. There's no rail, no landing pad, nothing other than smooth frame. On the CSX, I don't get any irritation in the side of my thumb when I'm getting that good leverage up at the front. So it's more pleasant to shoot, which then gets us into how do they shoot. I shot them both on the plates, and again, just to see how the recoil management is, shooting relatively fast. And that's why I didn't like the recoil impulse of the Kimber. I like this Kimber. It's a costly gun, looks nice, carries nice, but no, it's the recoil impulse is not something I like. So shooting the plates, advantage right now to me is going to be to the Smith & Wesson. Look, there's a couple of things I want to come back to here in a minute, though. So we reached out to 25 yards, and 25 yards, yeah, they're relatively similar. I can generally hit what I want with them. That O-sight S definitely helps when I start stretching the distances. But then we get out to 50 yards. I know. Why would you want to shoot little guns like this at 50 yards? It's strictly a self-defense gun, which means to some folks out there, the 3, 5, or 7 yard statistical average. That's why I see so many people coming to the range that only shoot at 3, 5, or 7 yards. They get most of their hits somewhere on a big silhouette target at 3, 5, or 7, and they're just happy as can be. I want to know how well I can perform with whatever. If you watch the channel, you know my thoughts on that. So if you want to know whether or not you need to be able to shoot beyond that statistical 3, 5, or 7 yard distance, ask Elijah Dickon how he stopped what could have been a real tragedy in the Greenwood Mall outside of Indianapolis a couple of years ago. Well, several years ago now. Now I want to know how I can do. So 50 yards. With the CSX, I pretty much hit everything first shot. The gong, the 16, the 12, the 10, the 8, and even the 6. Initially, I thought I hit just the shepherd's hook, but when I looked at the video, I actually nicked the plate 6 inches at 50 yards first shot with the CSX. Doing the Kimber, and again, maybe some of this is because my left thumb and right trigger finger were getting just a little bit sore at this point. So the gong, no problem. The 16, okay. The 12, all right. It took me 3 shots to get the 10 inch. And then it took me 3 shots to get the 8 inch, and I never could get the 6 with the Kimber. Maybe a little optic adjustment on that, because it looks like in the replays I was shooting a little bit to the right on that. And again, that's left-handed shooters normally, or right-handed shooters normally push to the left. So I'm not blaming this on the shooter. I'm saying that I probably could have adjusted the optic, but the grouping still around the plate wasn't as consistent. So advantage at 50 yards for me anyway. Back to the Smith & Wesson. All right, a couple of other points on this. The grip texture, and again, I've compared each, or actually I've looked at these in other videos, but the grip texture, the front strap, frag pattern, back strap, a little bit of a frag pattern on it. Grip texture goes all the way up on the Kimber on both sides, and again, they are replaceable. On the Smith & Wesson, however, they did add a little texture to the front. It's got a plastic panel in here that's got some good grip to it, but it does move around a little bit. And even the little back strap has texture here, but then when you put the little back strap on, it leaves everything bare in here. Lots of bare up there, and where my thumb wants to work here, no traction. So it got better, but not where I wanted to be. One other thing is also the length of the trigger guard itself. With a gloved hand, I can easily get into the Kimber. I can still get into the Smith & Wesson, although it's not quite as forgiving. Cocking serrations on both. You've got the fish scale type on the Kimber, which don't provide quite as much traction as the straight cuts do on the Smith & Wesson. Of course, again, you can rack it using the optic if you need to. Both have external extractors. Both are fully ambidextrous. Well, not fully. Ambidextrous slide stop lever, ambidextrous manual safety, which, by the way, still allows slide action even with the safety on, which is kind of nice. I don't believe the magazine. The magazine catch, yeah, is swappable on the Kimber, and I think they give you an extra one to put in there on the Smith & Wesson to make it all left-hand friendly. Now, fiber optic front sight on the Kimber, and just a plain white dot on the on the Smith & Wesson, and when you mount the optics, you do lose the rear sight, but that's again where the O sight S comes in. They do have the rear sight notch on each one. I got the sights kind of dimmed down here, so they're just barely showing up in the camera. But that's where that rear notch comes in, and it's still fairly accurate with that. All right, lots of differences, lots of similarities. And as much as I like my Kimber haters, I know, you just leave your comments politely down there, okay? I've had a lot of Kimbers. I like Kimbers, and they do work well. I also like Smith & Wessons. And in this case, as much as I really like a lot about the Kimber, I'm giving the edge to the Smith & Wesson. Even though the trigger isn't quite as light as the Smith, not quite as smooth as the Kimber. The Smith & Wesson trigger is a little heavier. But overall, the gun shoots better. I just wish they'd fill in a little bit of texture up here. Well, that's what Talon grips are for. So I'm giving the edge to the Smith & Wesson E-Series. That's the winner. And that's what I'm I'm still going to be carrying the original when I'm working around the ranch here. Comments down below, highly appreciated. Thanks for dropping in.